Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to your go to space for self discovery, mindset shift, and practical strategies to help you live a more purpose driven life. Today, we are diving into a crucial conversation: how your cultural background can affect your mental health, especially if you are an immigrant navigating life in a new country. This episode is really for anyone who's ever felt caught between two worlds and striving to preserve their heritage while adapting to a new environment. We will explore the challenges of balancing cultural heritage with the pressure of assimilation, the resilience required to thrive, and how mental health care can be tailored to better support these experiences. Here's a fact that might surprise you. More than 35% of immigrants in the US feel stressed out by cultural differences, but less than 20% seek mental health support. Why the disconnect? Well, distrust in the system, language barriers, and fears around confidentiality often prevent them from reaching out. This number highlights a major gap in mental health care, and our guest today is working to bridge that gap. Joining us today is Dr. Suelem Rosalino. She's a mental health expert with over 10 years of experience. She's a psychotherapist and a licensed clinical social worker dedicated to serving undeserved communities. For more impactful work with the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families, supporting at-risk adolescent and struggling families, to founding her own private practice specializing in trauma-related disorder like PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Her impact is very profound. Her practice is especially focused on helping Spanish and Portuguese-speaking families, and she's known for her expertise in conducting psychological evaluation for asylum seekers and survivors of domestic violence. Dr. Rosalino believes in the power of creating a therapeutic space where a client feels safe, understood, and respected. But that's not all. Dr. Rosalino's doctoral research dives deep into why some immigrants group avoid therapy even when they need it most. Using Berry's acculturation theory, she helps us understand how cultural pressure can affect mental health and what can be done to help people feel more comfortable getting the support they need. So get ready for a heartfelt and thought-provoking conversation filled with wisdom and actionable strategies. It is my honor to welcome Dr. Suelem Rosalino to the show. Before going deeper into the subject of our episode, I want to talk to you about my coaching program and why I created it. A few years ago, I found myself in a very dark place. I was working hard, but felt like I was spinning my wheels. I had no control over where my life was going. Everything around me was crumbling, and I was powerless to stop it. It's frustrating and scary when you've lost your sense of direction, especially in your 30s and 40s, when you feel like you should have had things figured out by now. That's why I created Rise. It's a coaching program for professionals who, like I did, feel disconnected from their purpose and passion. Through 4 simple steps, Rise helps you break free from doubts, reconnect with your true self, set clear goals, and take actions that move you forwards. I've been where you are, and I found a way through it. And I know you can too. So if this message resonates with you and you're ready to start your journey of rediscovery and purpose, I would love to help you take that next step. So feel free to connect with me through my website, www.yvestmukanya.com, and it spells YVESTMUKANYA.com, or on LinkedIn, it's just Yves Mukanya. Let's work together to help you create the life you know you deserve. Now, let's get back to our episode. Have you ever felt like you were stuck? Asking yourself, how do I find clarity and purpose when everything around me feels overwhelming? And I'm not even sure where I'm going. Well, you're not alone. Whether you're running a business, raising kids, or trying to keep up with the demands of life, we all reach a point where we lose our sense of direction. But here's the thing. If you're ready to rediscover your passion, find your way back again, and reconnect with what truly matters to you, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Yves Mukanya, and you are listening to the Rising and Thriving podcast. Hi, Dr. Rosalino.
Hi.
How you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop calling you Dr. Rosalino because you and I know each other pretty well, right?
Absolutely.
Like I have worked for you at some point. I was an intern at your company for a little bit. So we have a pretty close relationship.
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, I'm glad that you were able to join me for this discussion. And what I'm going to do, I want to go direct to the point. In the intro, I talked about your experience, your accomplishment, and mentioned your research, but that doesn't give me an idea of who you are or anybody
Okay.
coming in for that matter. So, what I want to do at this point is to start by understanding the person behind those accomplishments. All right. So, my first question for you is this: can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, and how your cultural identity shape your views on mental health?
Okay. Well, I'm
Hmm.
Sue, and I'm really excited to be here with you today, Eves. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is a very important topic for me because it actually relates to me. I am born in Brazil, but raised in the United States. My father, Jose, he came through the Mexican border in 1989, crossed just the same story that I hear with a lot of my clients, crossed through the border, entered the United States
Hmm.
illegally for an opportunity for a better life for
Hmm.
us, was able to obtain a job, send money back home. And then a year later, my sisters and myself, my mother, we
So
came.
he worked for a
Um,
whole year and helped you get
Yes,
all the whole family come in. Okay.
absolutely, yes. The only difference is we were able to come with a visa, so we came in through the country, legally with a visa. But, our story doesn't end
Hmm.
there. It wasn't all happiness after we arrived in the United States. My father was illegal here. We happened to come in with a visa. Then we overstayed our visa. My dad was here illegally, and so now we became illegal immigrants in the country. I feel that, throughout all of those years until we were able to gain status in the country, we were nervous, scared, unable to talk about how being illegal in this country, shaped who we got, who we
Hmm.
were, being scared all the time, us as kids, our parents as
Hmm.
adults. We never really had an opportunity to really discuss how being an immigrant in this country really affected us mentally, physically, emotionally, job, health,
So
everything.
even now,
Um,
you haven't had like how have you processed those emotions? Because it's pretty traumatic for kids your age, right? Feeling scared all the time, and then how? And now you say that you never had the opportunity to talk about it. But what about in your adult life? How have you and your family processed it?
we didn't. My sisters and I, my parents, like my parents were very strict and they had one rule: do not talk about your immigration status
Mm.
with anyone outside of this family. And so we felt so scared all the time because, and that's what I'm going to discuss
Mhm.
later, through my research as well as personally, and then through my work with a lot of my families. It's the being
Mhm.
scared, distrust of other
Mhm.
people, distrust of the authorities, and thinking that, at any moment, someone's going to come and get us,
Mhm.
and we are going to be shipped either to jail or back to Brazil
Wow.
or our country of origin. So I grew up very scared.
Wow. That's
Yes.
and what about your parents? Because I know for your dad coming into a situation like that and bringing in his family when his himself is not legal, and then his family become illegal. How has that affected him?
He has never talked about it. Now, when let me
Mhm.
rephrase that. He talks about it now that we're adults and it's 40 years later.
Wow.
And he talks about now a lot of the struggles that he experienced. Number 1, being back in Brazil as a Black man and not having the opportunities to get out of poverty, even despite going to school with 3 little kids and, being able to gain his bachelor's degree in engineering and not being able to find a job because of the color of his skin and lack of opportunities in
Mhm.
Brazil, and the fact that we lived in such a small town, and that's the whole reason why we or my parents decided to come to the United
Okay.
States, to give us a better life, to give us opportunities that they or us we wouldn't otherwise have in
Okay.
Brazil. So when he talks about his journey into the United States, he talks about, going hungry because we sold everything. I remember being young. I was about 5 years old. We had nothing in our house because he sold everything to be able to afford the trip into the United States. We had to pay the coyotes, money to cross my dad through the
Mhm.
border.
What are
And
coyotes?
so coyotes are individuals that you pay in
Mhm.
Brazil or where other countries that you are, South America, Central America, to cross you through the border. They'll get you across the border for, I don't know, At that time, I think it was $10,000 US dollars. So my dad borrowed, sold,
Wow.
anything you could imagine, with the exception of doing anything
Mm-hmm.
illegal, to be able to afford the trip here. But at the end of the day, to pay those coyotes, they get you through the borders. After that, they don't feed you, they don't nothing. You sleep outside, you cross the rivers. I don't know if you've ever heard stories of crossing through the borders, of between, US and Mexico. You go through rivers, people die, women and children die or get
Mm-hmm.
raped. But for my dad, he talked about, bits and pieces of the traumatic experience he had crossing the border, and spending 2 to 3 days, lost because the coyotes would, like, go away for a few hours. They would tell you to wait here. They would go away. You think it's a few hours, but they will be gone for days, and they come back
Mm.
to get you, and they tell you not to move, and you don't shower, you're sleeping in the middle of the desert. There's no clean water around, and you're with people you don't know, so that distrust already happens there.
Okay. All right. So, wow, that's that's definitely a very traumatic experience. All right.
Yeah.
So, from your history now, right? What inspired you to focus on supporting undeserved Spanish and Portuguese speaking communities?
Oh, actually, I started out working with the Hispanic population. Well, let me go
Mm-hmm.
back. When I was young, and I think you can relate to this because I think, you're from
Mm-hmm.
Congo. I don't know when it was that you came to the United States, but I remember being young, like 9 or 10 years old in the United States, translating for my parents because my sisters and I were in school and we were learning English. My parents did not know any English. We were translating in doctor's appointments, important visits. My mom would send me to, like, with different Brazilian people to translate for them. And I remember being in that social work role, like being young and enjoying what I was doing and translating. And I remember being doing a great job.
You were doing
Um,
that as a child with no
yeah,
degree.
yes, no degree translating. You could imagine how those translations would kind of equate, but
Yeah.
I think I did a pretty
Yeah.
good job. I was, like, translating for my parents at school
Mm.
meetings. Like, they call it ESL meetings, so English
As a
as a
second
second
language. Yes,
language.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
so I'm translating for my parents in the ESL language. I Because when we first came, we lived in North Providence. There was no Brazilian people in North Providence, Portuguese speaking people. Back then, there in the 90s, it wasn't as culturally sensitive in the school
Mm-hmm.
system, in other words. Like, today, they have, like, interpreters, maybe some school districts. They
Depending.
have
Mm-hmm.
interpreters and make sure that they have culturally appropriate, folks there translating for you in these meetings, these ESLs or IEP meetings today. Back then, there wasn't.
Mm.
So my mom and dad relied on us to translate for them.
Okay, so using the having the kids do the work because you guys speak more a better English than they did. Okay.
Exactly. As time went on, I continued in that role of helping. That translated into, like, actually going to helping other Brazilian
Mhm.
folks, learning Spanish because my parents made other friends that were Spanish
Mhm.
speaking. So if you speak Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, you can speak
Oh,
Spanish, relatively well, and you can
you can
understand.
translate. It's easily translatable. Okay.
Exactly. So I remember translating for other folks. So I've been doing this type of social
Mhm.
work or translation and helping since I was young.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you then, as someone who work extensively with immigrant families, right? What are the challenges you personally face in navigating cultural identity in the workplace?
Okay, I would say for me personally, understanding that not every culture is the same, even if we are from South
Mhm.
America, Central America, you can't assume.
Mm.
You cannot assume. You have to basically ask questions, do research, don't take a biased stance, and don't think that that person that's sitting in front of you is going to trust you off the bat. They don't know you. They don't know if you're working for immigration. They
Mhm.
don't know if you're working against them. And so I'm sure that they've gone through a lot of issues with, their culture and their own identity, which Barry talks about that in his research and the research that I, did through his
Mhm.
research and the acculturation, and the separation and, just coming into this country and adapting to this new culture while still keeping your own identity and developing trust with these people that you have no idea who are sitting in front
Yeah.
of you. And also I keep thinking about too, when I was young and my parents saying, "Okay, don't trust anyone, don't talk about, your immigration status, don't, all this and all these things keep coming into mind." And so when I'm sitting across from somebody, from a different culture, a different country, even somebody from Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
but from the northern part of Brazil, I have to understand that maybe my culture, even being from the same country, is different.
Mm,
So I can't be biased. I can't, take a judgmental stance, finish sentences for them because maybe we're not in the same page. Making sure that I'm asking open-ended questions, always being curious, like, explain this to me, do this. It's funny. I actually went to the Wyatt detention center a few weeks
okay.
ago, and I met with, and I was going to tell you, somebody, an inmate from Congo.
Really?
Um, yes, and he was in there because of all the trauma that he's suffered, and back in
Mm-hmm.
Congo and the wars, as well as there was a lot of things that happened in
Mm-hmm.
Congo. So you probably could fill in the
Yeah.
blanks. But because of that, it has led him into drinking and a path of destruction here in the U.S., and that's why he's incarcerated right now. And I asked so many questions. I went in there and I just like I told him, I said, I have no idea about your
Mm,
culture, and please, educate me on your culture, educate me on this war. What does this mean? Who are these people? What part of Congo were you
mm,
in? And it was how many languages like do you speak within one country? It's amazing. Again, even in Guatemala, let's go over to Guatemala
okay.
now. In Guatemala, there are several languages within Guatemala. Like there's Spanish. Spanish is just one of many languages that a lot of folks speak, depending on where you're from. And so I can't pretend that everyone that comes in front of me that's from Guatemala is going to speak Spanish. I had someone from Guatemala bring an interpreter because I couldn't understand their Quiche language. So it's
It's the
different. So I definitely do my research. I ask a lot of questions, and so that has changed me tremendously. Just because we're from different countries, I can't pretend to understand what you're going through. Maybe I can understand a little
mm-hmm.
bit because I've gone through it myself, but I can't.
Okay.
So,
All right. So, do you think that those challenges are what help you change the way you provide culturally competent care?
yes, absolutely. And I don't know about you, but any sort of training that, like, I'm going to say Pezzy has, I get tons of emails to cultural competency, diversity trainings. I try to take as many as I can because just because I'm from
Mm,
Brazil, that doesn't mean that I understand
correct.
everything. And I'm always like open to learning. And then I take that back to a lot of the interns that come across, Rosalino counseling, and I'm encouraging them to go take these courses as
Mm-hmm.
well. Just because you're from another country doesn't mean you understand everybody's
True.
culture. So you have to think differently and working with folks from different countries. There's more to this too. So when we talk about mental health, that's even another level,
Mm,
okay?
uh,
Because a lot of folks have a stigma, which I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit
mm,
more about
yeah.
that, about
Yeah.
speaking about
Mm-hmm.
mental health. Can I just go back to my upbringing for a minute?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So today, I understand that the reason why my parents did not talk about their mental health and everything that they've gone through, from racism in Brazil, my dad coming through the border, and whatever else that they went through, abuse, trauma when they were young
Mm,
themselves. They never talk about it. It's always hush, because even me, I was taught that you don't talk about your weaknesses,
mm,
you don't talk about your mental health. To others, you're gonna sound like you're crazy, and you don't want them to lock you up in a loony
mm,
bin, right? And so you tend to bottle it up, and that's when the depression comes
mm,
out, and that's when the anxiety comes out, that's when the panic
mm,
attacks, everything, that the PTSD, the dreams, the recurring
mm,
dreams. Um, and so my parents always taught us, "Oh, you're experiencing depression, what you think is depression, you need to get another job.
mm,
You need to be busier. You're not doing enough in school." And I always thought that was wrong. When I was younger, I was more like, "Okay, mom. Oh yeah, you're right. Let me go get another job.
mm-hmm.
Let me go study some
Mm-hmm.
more." Today, I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 no. I need to talk about it. I need to process this. My clients need to process
Mm.
this." Today, my parents are more open-minded with mental health, especially my mom. My dad, not so much, but my
Yeah, I
mom is.
remember
She
because
unders
we work. Your mom is the secretary of your
Yes,
company, and
yes.
I know when working with you, she's the sweetest person I've ever met.
Oh, thank you. She really loves you too. So,
All right, so it's from what I'm hearing from your story of your family, it's a lot of what comes up a lot is resilience, right? From your dad to leave the country and to come to something that he didn't know, and then try to thrive in it. That's resilience, and even for yourself growing up. So my question is, how has resilience played part in your life, and how do you use that to help your clients?
well, absolutely. I come from Brazil. We were poor, and even now, like, growing up, we were poor too, and but understanding that even though we were poor, at least we were here. My dad's made it here. He brought us here. We have opportunities to go to school. We have opportunities to learn. I'm more
Mhm.
open-minded. Obviously, like, back when I was younger, I was more listening to my parents, right? Like, don't talk about mental health. Today, I'm a strong advocate, like, for mental health, traumas from our countries, crossing the borders, understanding that, and what toll it takes on folks to leave their family for a
Mhm.
year or years and before reconnecting with them and not being able to go back to
Mhm.
Brazil or to their country of origin to see their loved ones or loved ones that have passed since they've been here in the US and they're unable to go
Mhm.
grieve. Um, I would say the resilience is being here, being able to talk about my own experiences with other kids, believe it or not,
Mhm.
that are here in the US and pretty much face the same as we did. Like, okay, we can't talk about our immigration status. I can't trust
Mhm.
you. All of this, you know, helping them grow through that, helping them understand that, hey, I'm here. I don't work for immigration. I don't, work for anyone else. I was in your place at one point. I can't pretend to understand every single thing that you're going through, every single trauma that you have been through, but I
Okay.
understand.
Have you found it easy to connect with those kids, like on a deeper level?
Absolutely. I'm not even going to kid you. Sometimes I have kids sitting in front of me and I'm interviewing them for, either their parents' immigration cases or their own, and they cry. I cry with them because I feel it. I feel their pain of the fear, that fear that I felt growing up. I feel it with them, and so sometimes I cry with them, or I'm able to kind of give them a hug. I know we're not supposed to,
Mhm.
but I'm like, give them a hug and say, "I understand." And if you need to talk, we don't have or I'm mindful, like, if a certain topic is too much in that moment, if you're talking about some sort of sexual assault, victims of trauma, whatever sort of traumatic experience, I say, "Let's, whatever it is, we can talk about it later. Why don't we talk about something
Mhm.
fun?" I'm good at that. I'm good at, like, making light of the situation and making them
Mhm.
laugh and then circling
You're coming back.
back,
Okay.
to get what, we need to get so I can help them with their
Okay.
cases, so.
All right. Wow. That's interesting, because now that I'm hearing about your journey, I have a better understanding of how deeply your culture influenced you personally and professionally. When we were working together, we talked, but we never got those type of conversation, or at least not to this level, to kind of understand where you're coming from. It was more about the clients, work, right? We touched a little bit about our own personality, but because you at work and it's so intense, you don't get those deep type of conversation with each other. So to me, it's interesting. So now I can see you from a very different perspective, right? So now that I have an understanding of the person behind the accolade, you know, I want to talk about your research and the broader
Mhm.
context of cultural challenge in mental health. For those who might not know or might not be familiar with that, could you explain what the Berry acculturation theory is and why it matters for mental health?
Okay, absolutely. So, Barry's acculturation, it explores how individuals balance and maintain their own identity while adapting to their new ones here in the US. It highlights the strategies, certain strategies like integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization. That
You
framework is
say
critical.
integration,
Integration.
integration. What is that? Okay, integration, marginalization,
Okay.
adapt.
Yep.
Hmm.
Integration,
Okay,
assimilation,
separation.
separation, and marginalization.
Okay,
So let me go through that a
okay,
little bit, okay? I'm gonna
okay.
dissect that. So integration. So when an immigrant is in this country and is learning English, however, they're also actively participating in the American society while still maintaining their own cultural background. Like, so for instance, celebrating El Dia de los
Hmm.
Muertos, or it is Tres Reyes on the 24th, December. Christmas Eve. So just kind of integrating their own culture here in the US. Okay. Then it goes into assimilation. Okay. When a new immigrant completely adopts the custom and language of their host country, which is here in the US, and essentially like sort of abandons their own origin, like their own culture. So for instance, like I would say integrating into this new society equals like celebrating Thanksgiving. Okay, that we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in our countries of origin.
Okay.
So just simulating to this new culture, or even when we were younger, not necessarily me, but others that I know, like their families did not want them to speak, Portuguese or Spanish in the house because they wanted them to just learn
Hmm.
English. And today they don't know, Spanish or
Mm.
Portuguese because the families wanted them to assimilate into the country so that way it avoids bullying, it avoids racism, discrimination. So assimilating. The separation, an example of this is like, living like you being Amish or, Jewish and living in this community and living in an American society, and integrating your own cultural values into the American society, being Amish in the
Mm.
city. Does that make sense? Still living like an Amish, person.
Okay.
And lastly, the marginalization, which is when a refugee who feels excluded from both their home country, their culture, and pretty much adapts to a new society that they're living in. And but they're still struggling to embrace due to discrimination, the discrimination that I was telling you
Okay.
about, and the lack of opportunities, which happens a lot here in the US. Sometimes, especially given that, like, if you don't speak
Hmm.
English or, you have folks saying, oh, speak English, like you kind of feel like you can't speak your language around others because others will feel that you need to speak English here in America.
Mm.
And so, yeah, and they're feeling that way. And all of this, if you can't do this or integrate all of this, it causes bigger issues, which is depression and anxiety. Or it causes it regardless of doing this, because coming into a new country that's completely different when it comes to culture and integrating into this culture can be very, very scary.
Mm.
And that's what Barry dives into when he did his
Okay.
research.
All right. So what I'm just going to go back and repeat what you just said for more understanding. You say integration
Yeah.
because it has different part: integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization.
Yep.
Right. Those are the four steps.
Yes.
And integration, say you said that when the immigrant they leave that country, they come to a new culture, they integrate it, but they still stay attached or connected to their own culture
Yes.
of origin. Assimilation is when they come into the new culture and they completely abandon their own.
Yes.
All right. Separation. So basically, they integrate the new culture, but it's as if you in the new culture, but you bringing in your own culture. It's not like you are part of it, but you live in it without really being part of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why you gave the example of the Amish.
Yes.
So they have their own way of living, and even though they are in the United States, but they just leave their own culture, and that's all there is to it.
Yes.
And then when you talk about marginalization, which means that the new immigrant coming in the new culture feel excluded,
Exactly.
and sometimes it's because of language barriers and things like that does not allow them to fully integrate the new culture.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
and the other thing is that Barry wants is that if one or most are happening to the immigrant or, a person that's coming into this country or from a different culture,
Mm-hmm.
um, like marginalization or even assimilation, it can cause depression, anxiety, and a lot of the times, believe it or not, folks that have gone through, severe trauma in their countries of origin
Mm-hmm.
tend to and are seeking asylum here in the US, they want to assimilate. Okay? They want to completely forget and separate. Not even separate, not separation in that way, but completely forget their culture and just I'm American now. I don't want my kids to speak Spanish. I'm gonna speak English, and it just doesn't go for Spanish folks. It, could be anyone. Um, and I'm just completely going to get into this new culture and be an
Mm.
American.
Okay.
Which right now might be okay, but later on may
Affect
affect
them
them.
later. Okay. And then you say because of those things that can also create they have repercussion on their mental health.
Yes.
All right. From your research, right? What are some cultural and psychological barriers that prevent Mexican immigrant and any other immigrant for that matter from seeking therapy?
Well, we've talked about that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
earlier. So number one, distrust. Distrust of the person that's sitting across from
Mm-hmm.
you. Number two, definitely lack of understanding or fear of judgment that the person that's sitting across from you is, you're thinking that they're going to judge me. They're going to judge me in what I say, or they're gonna throw me into quote unquote a loony bin or
Mm.
think I'm crazy, quote unquote. What else? I would say, like, the stigma of mental health, which is not looked at positively, the language barriers, not understanding each other, not understanding or the person that's sitting across from you is being biased,
Mm-hmm.
and, um, just lack of awareness to a culture.
Okay.
Confidentiality is a big one too.
Confidentiality.
Yes.
So how does that manifest?
Like, they think that you're going to tell people about them or,
Mm.
tell their mothers, tell, immigration, tell whoever. They think that they cannot trust you.
They cannot trust you.
Yes.
And as someone who works with them, right, they do want to help them. How do you bridge that gap? How do you get to the point where they can fully trust you?
I immediately introduced myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Dr. Rosalino. Call me Sue. Make them feel at
Mm-hmm.
home. Offer them coffee. Um, just kind of make them feel like this is your home and you can trust me. I go over confidentiality with them. And I make sure that they understand I don't work for your attorney. I don't work for immigration or any other government agency. I work with you. I'm here to help you. And don't worry about anything you tell me. It's going to stay between us. There are going to be, in a few instances where if you report certain things, then I'm going to take the necessary steps to help you further. To offer you suggestions or you know. So most of my clients feel comfortable right off the bat. And I start
Mm-hmm.
joking. I start joking with them, laughing, make light of the situation, and just kind of like complete and this is the other thing, I don't go in there and I'm dressed up in suits. I feel like being comfortable in the environment, Eves, you've been to my office.
Yeah,
I've since the last time you've been to my office, I've kind of redesigned the office and I've made it more homely, like
you did.
more homely. Yes, like when you come in, there's couches, there's even in my office, it's like it's different. It doesn't feel like a therapy office. It doesn't feel like a conference room. There's TVs, there's
Mm-hmm.
I try to make it as comfortable as possible for the clients going in there. It's still professional, but it's comfortable.
You're comfortable. Okay. All right. So you talked about certain barriers that you say distrust, fear of judgment,
Yeah.
and you say confidentiality is one of the biggest thing.
Yes, and one of the other important facts for other clinicians to know when they're working with, folks from different cultures is if you ask questions and you act curious, like in other words, you know, I'm very curious. I need to ask questions. Like that gentleman that I was meeting from Congo. I love your culture, learning about your culture. I didn't love some of the traumas, but I just love the culture,
Mhm.
and I love meeting new people. So asking about somebody's culture, you know,
Mm.
in other words, caring is
Mm.
important.
Okay.
And I think that that makes them feel more at home.
Oh,
You care
okay.
to find out how many languages they speak,
Mm.
where they used to live. Tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad.
Mm.
So,
Okay. Alright, so you mentioned, I lost my line of thought on that one, but it was something when it comes back, I'll get back to you on that one. Oh, no, no, no. It's actually when you talked about trust and being curious, right? Has there been any instances when because you're meeting this person for the first time, they don't know about you, they have distrust. Have you had any instances when your curiosity backfired?
yes, asking about one's culture sometimes, especially when we're talking about disciplining of their own children. It backfired in a way like, ooh, you just disclosed your discipline habits on your child now who's 5 years old,
Mm,
and how your discipline methods were directly related to how you grew up and how you were disciplined in your country of origin. Well,
got it.
here in the US, we have to, talk about disciplining. And I don't think it backfired so much that we had to, call DCYF. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't talk to them about that at that moment, but, I gave suggestions on, different ways to, discipline appropriately, safely. But then after that, I had to call DCYF. I don't know where it went because, as you know, DCYF doesn't, if it's an investigation, they don't tell us
Mm-hmm.
what happens after the case. Usually the clients will come to you and say, "Hey, DCYF came to our house." So yeah. So I don't know what
Okay.
happened, but that definitely backfired, and I was like,
Not fine.
"Oh,
Okay. All right. So we talked about the challenges here, right? Distrust, fear of judgment, confidentiality. How does systemic biases make these challenges worse?
I'm not talking about, any sort of political views or stance right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that a lot of folks feel differently about, immigrants and
Mm-hmm.
immigrants coming here to take our jobs and getting free benefits, getting free health insurance, and
Mm-hmm.
not being treated equal. I've heard several clinicians say to me, I choose not to work with the immigrant populations because they're here to take jobs. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to school you because you have no idea what you're talking about. And because of, this systemic bias, like,
Mm-hmm.
they have completely wrong notions about the immigrant population, what they're able to qualify for here in the US, not having their legal statuses.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there's not a lot of us working with them.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, they cannot get health insurance. If you're illegal in this country, you can't get health insurance. You can't get food stamps. You can't, they're working in jobs that we don't want. Thank God that we have them working, these jobs. At least they're, helping to feed their families, and so I almost feel like there needs to be more education around this for a lot of folks, a lot of us clinicians, a lot of cultural competencies, a lot of training around immigrations, and unfortunately, there isn't a lot of training. There isn't. We have to create one. Eves, we have to create one.
We can
Yeah.
start. It's no problem, right? But you mentioned that in the beginning when you talked about those training that you get from Prezi or something,
Pezi.
Pezi.
Pesi, Pezi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they offer those type of training, right?
Mhm.
So that's accessible to the majority of mental health professional.
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of them are free. Free.
Okay.
And they
Okay.
give you certifications and follow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the trainings even offer supervision.
Okay.
Supervision is when you're, meeting with other clinicians, like-minded clinicians, to discuss, anything that you have questions on clinically, and talk about it, process it, and, offer each other some clinical suggestions of how to work with certain folks with different disorders. There are trainings out there if you look for it. Cultural competency trainings. However, as you may or may not know, it doesn't cover everything. There's so much when we talk about culture,
Mhm.
diversity and immigration. There's cultural competencies, like, I think
Mhm.
kind of like cookie cutter, you just touching on the surface, and then just
Mhm.
really diving in.
Diving. Okay. All right. Diving in is more of you interacting with your client, you interacting with the people, the immigrant, and understanding where they're coming from
Yep.
and seeing things from their perspective.
And also understanding your own cultural bias. People are
Mm.
so afraid. Even though I wanted to school that clinician that talked about immigrants coming into the country and stealing jobs, right? I understood that it's all about education. It's all about research and not getting your news from Facebook.
Mm.
Really looking at different outlets to go search for if you have a question about a culture, an issue, or educate yourself.
Okay.
So
All right. So, in your research, right, what solution have worked best to overcome those barriers, or the one that we talked about, the distrust, the fear of judgment, the confidentiality? What solution has worked best to overcome that?
with my clients,
Hmm.
personally, like I said, I create an environment for them where they can feel very comfortable, but it doesn't just happen with immigration clients that I meet with.
Hmm.
There's clients that just come into the door and it's the first time their parents, some of the kids that are first gen from DR, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, or Honduras. Their parents, this is the first time, and they're actually, like, being made to bring their child in for therapy by, like, DCYF because of something that happened within their family or the school suggesting it. I bring them in, I learn about their culture, I have them sit down with me, I talk to the parents, I let them know the process of therapy, like,
Hmm.
then I talk to the kids, and I go from there. And then I educate my staff, "Hey, you need to come across like you are approachable for these parents that are scared, these clients that are scared. This is the first time that they may be talking to you about their most vulnerable issues like mental
Hmm.
health and trauma, like first time that they're disclosing that there was trauma that happened, or they need to trust you. I have a little girl that I'm meeting with now, 10 years old. I suspect sexual abuse, but she doesn't trust me yet to really
Hmm.
talk to me about it.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to tell the parents yet because she didn't disclose it.
Hmm.
But it's all in that trust. You build the trust,
Hmm.
and you create an environment where they feel like, hey, if you tell me this, I will keep you safe. This is the other important thing. Even though you have a distrust in me, right?
Hmm.
You can talk to me about it. I can't say that I'll understand everything that you're going through, but I certainly will try to get you the help that,
Hmm.
I'll educate myself and figure out how to get you that help that you need.
And how do they respond to when you approach things like that?
I really love the clients that I work with. There's been difficult clients, we can all talk about that. There's been clients where you're questioning whether or not this field is for you.
Mhm.
There's been
I want to hear about that though.
Yeah, yeah. There is clients where you go home and you're awake all night and you're
Hmm.
thinking about, "Hey, did I say the right things? Did they go home and they have questions, more questions?" Because I feel like there's a part of me that didn't answer all of their questions. Are they okay tonight? Is everything okay? I don't wanna call and alert them or, you
Mm.
question yourself.
Okay. So now that you're mentioning it, right? What do you do when you get home to kind of disconnect from that? Because it's as if you're bringing work at home, right? And home has to be a place where you unwind and disconnect from everything. But you have those when you have those questions going to your mind, what do you do to make it stop and then reconnect with the people in your home, like your husband, your kids, family members?
Pre-baby, pre-two-year-old, come home, hang out on the couch with my oldest son and my husband, and we, watch a basketball game or go to a basketball game or
Mhm.
just, unwind and talk about our days. Post baby, I'm like playing downstairs. I created a playroom downstairs for Eli, and I'm downstairs playing with them, and I'm,
Mm.
talking and over screaming kids, right? Um, but overall, I think the best thing to do as a clinician for self care, Supervision. I think supervision is so important, what I talked about earlier, like talking to other clinicians about anything that is happening and you have questions on, like these thoughts of me going home and I'm up all night thinking about whether I said the right things or question my career or,
Mhm.
all of that because we're not miracle workers, right?
Mm.
I think supervision is very important. It's very important even after you get you're fully licensed or fully independently licensed and you want to talk, you should want to talk to other
Yes.
clinicians and just debrief,
Okay.
talk to someone that's not going to judge you. I think bringing your work home and talking to your partner or spouse is not the best thing. When you come
Mhm.
home, you disconnect. Gym, go to the gym.
Mm.
I'll be the first one to tell you I can't stand the gym. I can't stand the gym, but I know I have to go to the gym. I know I do.
Yeah.
Um, a glass of wine every once in a while, watch
Mm.
out. Every once in a while
That's
helps too. And just be around people that are positive,
okay.
because we hear so much negativity and sometimes that transference and counter transference comes into play.
Mhm.
Whether you're in front of a client or you're coming home and you're taking home, issues that happened at work, it's important to disconnect for sure.
Okay. Okay. From your experience, right? How does adjusting to a new culture affect mental health and work related stress in immigrant populations?
I think that number one for work, are you talking about my clients or
It
me
could be it
personal?
could be no, I'm talking now I'm going back to your clients, right? Like
Okay.
they work, right? So now how does that affect them?
Oh my goodness. I have so much to talk about that, but I'm gonna say the main thing.
Mhm.
Some of my clients work all day. They have 2 to 3 jobs, and I'm like, "When do you sleep? When do you sleep?" A lot of them don't have time. They go home for a little bit, and when they're home, they go to sleep, and I'm like, "When do you spend time with your family? When do you, have time for yourself?" They're like, "Oh, I just, one day of rest and I'm sleeping that day." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Are you taking your children out? Are you doing that?" "No, no, I sleep. Sometimes I do, but mostly I sleep." So, they're not really thinking of their mental health. Some of them get so overworked that they end up in the hospital from work exhaustion, from not processing exhaustion. Like,
Mm.
you're at work that you're not thinking about it, but the one time that you're home and, all the thoughts come to your head when you're not busy, right? Because when you're working, you're busy, you don't have time to think
True.
sometimes. That's, when all of that mental health issues come to play, right? When you're home and you're thinking and there you go. So, as far as family and work balance life, I feel like a lot of my clients don't, especially the ones that are recently here in the US, it's
Mhm.
work, 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 send money home to country of origin, no time for me, sometimes times for kids, but mostly kids are home all day. And I can totally relate to that because my parents also used to work 2 to 3 jobs, both morning to night, and my sisters and I stayed home a lot alone.
Oh.
Yeah.
And have you seen a lot of burnout?
Yeah, I do, I do. A lot of them, they don't take care of themselves. They don't go to the doctors, because number 1, a lot of them do not have health insurance. A lot of them are working under the table,
Mhm.
and again, in jobs that folks don't want, right? Cleaning jobs, kitchen jobs, and so they don't go to the doctors, they don't take care of themselves, and a lot of them develop, like, a lot of health issues because of that.
Mm.
You've heard
Mm.
of it, too much of something
Too much of something, yeah.
becomes problematic
Mhm. Alright. Okay. Alright. Well, that's a definitely a pretty good insight on systemic and cultural barriers because I don't think that a lot of people understand the weight or the weight that are on some of those immigrant families and what they have to do, especially not just for them here
for their
and their family and also for their family that stayed back home. And you gave the example of your parents doing the same thing for a couple of years. Now, I want to shift the focus to the professionals serving those community and the strategies that they can adopt. What are some common problem mental health professionals face when working with people from different cultures?
Definitely, I'm gonna go back to that lack of trust, right?
Hmm.
But from them, but from us to our clients, I would say lack of awareness, Um,
Lack of awareness.
yeah, lack of awareness to the
Mm,
culture, to
mhm,
the country conditions, right? And the conditions that they came into the US with,
mhm,
asking those questions. I would say lack of cultural consideration, a lot of bias into working with the people that are coming in front of you.
mhm,
Let's see, a lot of us, we're humans, so we like to judge. A lot of us judge the folks that are sitting in front of us, and frankly, a lot of us don't work with the immigrant population because a lot of the work is pro bono. A lot of the work is pro
a
bono.
lot of the work is pro bono?
Yes, they don't have insurance, and a lot of the times they don't have money. I tend to work with you whether you have money or not. Like, I can't I lost thousands of dollars, working with folks, but to me, it matters helping someone.
Mm,
They'll come back to me in, two folds of the universe. I feel like you need to put out positivity and help folks that need you because you never know when you're the one that's gonna need that help.
mm,
And that's why I tell you that resilience, like, I wanna help folks that are in the same or, were at one point in the same situation as I was, um, and help them understand that you can get through this. I'm gonna offer you whatever help I can. This is what I went to school for. So a lot of clinicians tend to not wanna work with folks that don't have insurance or can't pay out of pocket.
mm,
A lot of clinicians don't take the time to train themselves, go to these PESI trainings, volunteer at Dorcas International or the International Institute, Dorcas, or Progreso Latino and
mhm.
understand, immigrant issues.
Okay. So now, like, how can a mental health professional balance cultural sensitivity with the need of effective treatment?
Definitely take training. Get familiar, get curious, take a lot of training. PESI offers so much free training with the supervision. PESI, PESI, look up
Mhm,
PESI. In some of those trainings, even if they're not live, you don't have to go in person. You can buy them too, like, or they're free. They're on their website. You can click on
mhm,
them and you can get, also those diversity CEUs and cultural CEUs. Don't just do it for that. Do it because you truly want to learn. Learn something new. Get out of your comfort zone.
mm,
If you only work with couples and couples therapy, okay, learn immigration issues, because you never know if you're doing couples therapy when an immigration issue may come up.
mm,
And vice versa for me.
mm.
I am learning couples therapy now. It's not my strong suit. I want to learn. Definitely volunteer.
Yeah, you know how I learned couples therapy?
How
It was your sister.
really, Sabrina?
Yes,
Yeah,
she put I when I when that's when I was still an intern, all right, coming from school, and I told her like the first time I said because she's the one who gave me the interview before my internship.
yeah,
I asked her, I told her, she asked me what areas you don't want to work in. I'm like, I don't want couples therapy, and for a lot of different reasons. Right. But I had a good feedback from my teacher, my couples therapy teacher, and she told me that she loved my technique, but I was not really attracted to it. So when I told Sabrina about that, and she was like very seriously looking at me, like, "Oh, okay, no problem." When I started, I think about 2 days after I started, the next in the morning when I came in, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Eve," because she always called me Mr. Eves. I'm
yep,
like, Mr. Eves, how are you doing? I have a surprise for you. I'm like, "What is it?" Well, I have a couple for you. And I'm like, Sabrina, I told you I don't want to work in it. I'm like, no, you can't pick and choose. You don't, because you don't have experience in it. You don't know how it's going to work out. You don't know if you're going to like it or not. So in all honesty, I can't just cut your training just like that. I have to put you in a situation and yourself, you're going to evaluate. You have to go over your misconception of what it is and get over whatever is blocking you. And I went at it and I loved it.
okay.
Right. Right.
I may have to hire you to teach me because, oh,
I loved it. Like to me, it's the it was the easiest thing to do, right? It was the easiest thing to do. Until this day, I'm like, if she did not do that, if she just listened to me,
yep.
I would have probably cut myself off from something that I do enjoy and that I do like to do. All right. All right. So that
Absolutely.
was just a parenthesis, just a parenthesis on how I learned. But you say that you're learning it yourself now.
I am. I am. I actually want to do better at it because I don't like it. Just like you learn to love it, right? You learn to develop a love for it and help others because it's a need.
Mm,
So it's important. It's important to learn, get out of your comfort zone and learn something you don't like or you don't think you're going to like, and then eventually you learn to love it.
yeah, that's
So
true.
also volunteering, Eves, like
Mm,
volunteering at these organizations should Sojourner House, that deals with a lot of folks that are homeless and folks that deal with domestic violence, dealing with domestic violence within the immigration population as well. Like volunteering and getting to know, you know, through different avenues, immigration through different avenues, not only asylum, but like also folks that are in domestic violence situation partnerships here in the US.
okay.
Definitely doing that and talk I speak to a lot of lawyers because I work with a lot of immigration lawyers.
Hmm.
Well, so anytime a client has questions because they're crying over, "Oh, I haven't heard from my lawyer and immigration is taking so long, years." Like, "How about this? I can help you. I can sit here. If you're scared to speak to a lawyer, I can be that intermediary." And I learned myself a lot about the different processes
Mm,
and why it's taking long for someone to be granted asylum or whatever case they're
yeah,
applying for.
okay. So it's still a learning process from what
Yes.
I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not done. There is so much to learn. There are so many different cultures, and I'm so in love. I wish I can travel the world and just stay in a different culture every year, but we can't do that.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
this point, this.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that through your experience, you've trained people, mental health professional, and you've also been mentor to some of them. Okay. So what method have helped you teach other mental health professional about cultural understanding?
Uh, Definitely I have them sit in with me during you haven't had the opportunity to sit in with me in an immigration eval.
No.
Um, Sometimes it's hard, because a lot of my clinicians don't speak Spanish, so it's hard for
Hmm.
them to really get the gist of what's happening. But when I do have an English speaker, I call the clinician in and I'm like, "Come sit with me, come see, come learn what I'm doing."
Hmm.
And that is the best way to teach them. Also, any sort of other types of therapy that I do with kids, I'm very, very good with kids. I love kids. I love it. Give me I'm, like, challenged by difficult children, right? I'm like, "Bring them in. Let
Yes.
me talk to them,
I
please."
think that's for you. For
Yeah.
me, much earlier, I discovered that kids are just not my forte.
Aw,
That is
I
not where
doubt
I excel.
that.
I work with some kids. Some of them were great,
Yeah.
and some of them were very challenging,
Yes.
right? But it's for me to in order for me to relate to a client, they has to have conversation. And with kid, it's very difficult for me to get down to that level and have that kind of talk with them. So that that's why I'm like, that's not for me. It can be fun, but you have to be a certain type of person. You have to have a certain gift for
Yeah.
you to do that. Yeah.
I I feel that it's I relate. Not relate, shall I say, I love kids,
Mhm.
but certain age, like, I would say, like, I love 8 and up, right?
Mm,
I work better with 8 and up. They come in, "Oh," they call me Miss Rosalino, right? "Miss Rosalino, this is the drama that's happening in school." I'm like, "Tell me all about the drama. I wanna know." And I
mm,
truly wanna know the drama. It just helps me learn, and they, teach me lingos. They teach me, what different words they're using right now in school. I'm like, "I'm old. Can you tell me what this word means?" Even if I
mm,
know what it means, I'm like, "Let me go down to their level and learn." I do that. And I bring clinicians in and I'm like, learn through me. Like if you're
mm,
going to work with kids, whether it's in this setting or other settings or in an evaluation, you need to learn how to work with all population across the
mm,
board. And so I bring them in and work with me for that. Unless I'm working with immigrant population, I don't tend to really work with adults that much. Older adults, maybe up until 25. I I have a cap, not because I don't work well with the older adults. I prefer that age group, but I have the clinicians that don't have experience with that age group or don't wanna work with that age group come and shadow me, sit with me, see
Mm.
how I work with them.
Okay. Oh, so you sound like you're very hands-on.
Yes.
Okay. All
Oh,
right.
I get down. I'm like, "Let's draw together, let's play a game together." I do that because through like, if I can just kind of take you out of that, "Oh my god, don't judge me, da 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 da," everything, all that, fear that they're coming in front of me with. If I can
Mhm.
just break that down layer by layer, they're going to talk to me. They're gonna wanna trust me. But I'm also very honest with them. I'm like, "Listen, if you disclose certain things, I'm still, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I still have to report certain things if it's
Mhm.
affecting your safety,
Mm.
So I talk to them about that. So I don't want
Okay.
you to think you can't trust me, but I'm just letting you know that if if you disclose something, I'm going to have to just get extra help, and saying it in that way instead of, if you tell me something, I'm going to report you to the authorities, No,
Mm. Very
okay,
differently.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So I know that we touched upon this a little earlier, right? But can you share any tips for self-care or ways for mental health professional to avoid burnout while serving high need population?
Mindfulness,
Okay.
which, mind you, it's very hard because I don't know about you, I have so much with running your own business going on in your head and, "Oh, I wonder what I'm gonna do, for dinner tonight," or,
Mhm.
what insurances I have to bill or whatever. Um, I like mindfulness. That doesn't always work for me, especially when I have a lot of things going on.
Mhm.
Um, Supervision
Okay.
avoids burnout. Getting away from your office, like going out to lunch, like leave your office altogether, go out, go get a coffee and come back. Kind of, I feel like when you work better when you leave the situation. It even when you're writing a paper, right? Like a
Mhm.
research and you're stuck on something. Sometimes you just have to get up, go, come back, and your mind kind of resets itself, right?
Okay.
It's the same thing when you're doing therapy. You get up, go out. I think exercising is very important. I already told you my feelings around exercising. Being around loved ones. Do not
Mhm.
bring your problems home. Don't. Um, and a lot of the time, you are not a miracle worker. Remember that. You are not a miracle
Mm.
worker. You don't have a magic wand to change people's situation. And know that it's not you because a lot of times, like I said to you earlier, some people make you question am I doing a good job? Is
Mhm.
this the right field for me? I feel like I'm going nowhere. But again, with social work, with mental health, it's about the data and it's about time, right? It's about setting goals. And each goal, okay, by this month, I'm going to work on these DBT worksheets with these clients, and we're going to, by this month, and you're putting these goals in your mind, right? And also, you're doing it in your treatment plan. You put these goals in your mind and you stick to it,
Mm.
and you see the changes. Now, if you feel like it's been a month and the goals that you set forth is not working, then you either gotta change or
Mhm.
I like to do this. I talk to the clients, "How is therapy working for you?
Mm.
There anything that is working?" I need you to be completely honest with me because if you're not honest with me, then I'm not doing a good job.
So for that question, what's like the time frame before you ask that question?
I'll do it like I'd say, like, for me, it's like 6 weeks.
Okay.
If you're coming to see me once a week
Mhm.
and like we talked about something last week, right? And we
Mhm.
did a whole worksheet on it and what you're going to do, right? In regards to that issue. It's a journey, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a journey. But if the same issues you're coming in with are the same issues that we've talked about for 6 weeks straight and it's not working,
Mhm.
and my goals with you in this therapeutical journey is not working, from what I feel, I check in with the client.
Mm.
It took me a long time to get there because I didn't wanna hear. I'm like, "Oh god, I don't wanna hear that I'm not doing a good job," right? And I
Mm.
kinda felt like I was putting my head in the sand,
Okay.
until I was like, "No, I need to ask these questions. I need to know if what I'm doing is working. And if it's not, let me change. Let me do brief therapy. Let me do CBT, cognitive
Mhm.
behavioral therapy. Let me do EMDR." Like, Let me do something different with this client. Let me go
Okay.
learn something different to work with this client that, experienced rape and trauma, or
Mm,
refer them to the appropriate place, because it's not fair to the client if I'm not pretending, but, like, not really helping you or using the proper therapeutical modalities to work with you, or techniques, if it's not helping you.
okay. And quick question, what did you do to get over that fear?
I got older. I've been in this field long enough.
Mhm.
And also, most importantly, it's not about me. This isn't my journey. This is their journey.
Mm,
Um, and don't waste your time with me because you think I'm nice, right? Or I'm wasting my time on you. I want you to tell me the truth if it's not working for you, because this is your journey. It's important that you heal, you know?
mm,
And I've learned that, and also through supervision, a lot of supervision. And Eves, as you know, this field can get really lonely. After you get
mhm,
your LICSW or your LMHC, right? Your
mhm.
independent licensure, this field is lonely. Like, you find that you have no one to talk to that
True.
understands, right?
Mhm,
And that's why it's important for you to find a group of folks like, "Hey, this is what I'm going through, like, this is what's happening, this is what I wanna do." Even, like, I reached out to you, I think I respect you.
mm.
Last week, I wanna hire a nurse practitioner because I wanna bring that piece to
To
practice.
practice, okay.
And I'm like, "I wanna talk to you about it and see what your thoughts are," you know?
Okay.
I think it's important because I'm, like, stuck in whether or not I do or I don't, but
Mm,
see, I've been in this game for so long, and I don't know it all.
mm,
You do that through learning, through, techniques to not burn out, right? Gym, talking to others, not bringing your problems home, not taking on your problems as my problems, checking in with the clients. How am I doing for you? How are we doing? How are you doing, right? Yeah.
One thing that I also wanna ask is what advice would you give to those who want to better serve immigrant community?
I would say do it. They need you.
Mhm,
The immigrant population needs us, who are knowledgeable in mental health. And they need you to learn about their culture too, to be able to not just help them, but future them.
mm,
And also get familiar with the laws. Obviously, you're not an attorney or a judge where you're learning all the laws of the United States around immigration, right? But
mhm,
get familiar with the simple laws. Like, what does it mean to have a green card? What does it mean to go for your citizenship? What
mhm,
does it mean seeking asylum under what? Like, what happens when you don't have insurance? What can we do to help them? What kind of resources do they qualify for? You're going to find that not many,
mm,
and you're going to find a lot of closed doors for them. That's
mm,
why you need to learn different ways to work with them
okay,
using the little resources that you have.
okay.
Even if it means taking them on pro bono. It'll come back to you in twofolds. Doing good things for people comes back to
Come
you.
back. Okay. Just because you mentioned it, when you talked about closed doors, how do you handle the situation when you find yourself in front of a door that closes on you?
Oh, once a social worker, always a social worker. You advocate, you research.
Mhm,
You go to your legislators, right?
mhm,
I've gone to Sabina Matos, lieutenant governor.
mhm,
I've gone to my local, um, uh, I forget what his title is, but he's, in charge of the ward where I live. I'm like, "Look, I know you. You were my son's teacher. This is what's happening. I need you to tell me, where do I go? Tell me the person." He tells me the person, and I email that person. I go right to the source. You learn research, you learn to find resources, you learn to find money and advocate, you
mhm,
learn to help them advocate for themselves and not be afraid. Just because you're an immigrant, you're not an animal.
mhm,
Just because you're here doesn't mean they're gonna kick you out. It's a long process before you leave here, unless you did something, even when you did something tremendously horrible, there's still due process, you know? You
okay,
still are entitled to, like, a fair hearing, a fair trial.
okay, alright. Well, first of all, thank you for shedding some lights on the provider's perspective because sometimes, we also focus on the client, that we sometimes forget that we as clinician also need help. We also need resources, right? It always feel like it's a one-sided situation. Well, but to be honest, the client should always be the focus. right? But it's also everything that happens behind it as for us as clinician about taking care of ourselves, as you mentioned, right? Mindfulness, supervision, even though you don't like exercises, but exercise that works, right? Okay, so now that we've talked about the clinician, the providers, I want to talk about to look at the perspective of the immigrant. How does adjusting to the American culture affect someone who moved here as a child but find himself in the corporate world?
I think it's important if you came here as a child, to really learn the culture, right?
Mhm.
Keep your culture, keep your identity, but learn the culture. I think it's important to have friends from, like, different cultures, like, I had a lot of American friends. Like I said, I grew up in North Providence, and there wasn't a lot of Brazilian people, people that spoke Portuguese, so it was easier for me to learn English.
Mm.
I don't know if you remember, I'm a lot older than you. I, used to watch Sesame Street.
Yeah.
I don't Big Bird.
Yeah, yeah.
And, what's the guy with the sweater, Mr. Rogers?
I believe it was Mr. Rogers, but I haven't
Yeah,
watched this in such a long time.
exactly, but I remember being young and watching that and integrating and watching Sesame Street and learning English by watching, TV, and as I got older, even if okay, I'm legal in this country, I'm a US citizen now, you still get a lot of anxiety around, like, mistrust in who's around you. You still get that. It's kinda like you're still looking behind your back and you're always fearful no matter what, you grow up with it.
Mm.
Being an immigrant, and a child of immigrants and, being so long in this country without documentation. One of the things that I did not mention, how important it is taking care of your mental health. Clinicians need therapists ourselves, okay? We hear so much negativity, so much. And also remember, I was talking to you also about that transference and countertransference. And
Mhm.
it's so important that even though I'm working with a child of an immigrant or someone that may have come in the same way that I came, I can't take their experiences as my own, right? I can't sometimes their stories, I leave there sometimes and it's like, "Oh my god, I'm remembering how I felt," and that anxiety comes back, right? So, when you're in the professional world, it's important that you learn that not everybody, going back to that, is
Mhm.
out to get you or, don't worry about your surroundings, just act with caution, but, seek help if you're having anxiety or if
Okay.
if those feelings are coming back to you as a professional in the professional world and you
Mhm.
don't know where those anxieties are coming from. Supervision, therapy, exercise, all of that. So you can act accordingly in the
Okay.
professional world and not bring
Okay.
in your traumas into.
So you think from what you're saying, from I mean, at least that's what I'm understanding, that even immigrant bring their own sort of biases
Yes.
in the workplace.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
how it from what you've seen, how does that affect them?
I saw it in my parents, like, being afraid to take chances because they're afraid that they're going to, get sent back to their country of origin if they speak too
Mhm.
loud or say something. Sometimes they can get, taken advantage of. A lot of folks from other countries can get taken advantage of, overworked. They say yes to everything even though it affects their home life. And then also it translates to, work exhaustion,
Mhm.
mental health issues, not caring for your family, and all of that.
Okay. All right. So from the client that you've talked to, because we know that high stress industry can put you to the grinder. From your client's perspective, especially from someone who is a child of an immigrant or who came here when he was a child and grew up, now is working. What are the main challenges that they face in high stress industries?
I think it's anxiety.
Mm.
And learning how to speak up when you've been quiet for so long,
Mm-hmm.
um, learning how to find your voice, learning how to move up in your area and not stay stagnant, like not stay still because you're
Mm-hmm.
afraid to speak up. I found that even some of the folks that I work with who are children of immigrants or who grew up in the US, they have severe anxiety. They don't speak up. They oftentimes feel unheard. They're bullied.
Mm-hmm.
That others don't respect them because you're not, American. Um, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that to
Mm-hmm.
overcome. And me, just going back to me, or what I tell my clients is, go to school.
Mm,
Open yourself up to new possibilities. Put yourself in situations that you wouldn't normally put yourself in. If you think that you should get a raise, if you think that something is not right in what you're doing, you speak up. You know, don't worry about the repercussions. I mean, you speak up respectfully, right? Um, or, you move on to something different if it's not working for you. Also, I encourage a lot of them to continue seeking therapy, take medications for anxiety, or, I don't push medication. I meant like seek out a nurse practitioner to see if you can get a medication consult if the anxiety is too much. I also encourage them to get out of their shells, go to school, learn new things, get out of their shell.
mm. Get out of their shell.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think most importantly, and I don't know if you can relate to this, especially folks from other countries. From Brazil, I can speak from firsthand.
Hmm.
Education is very important.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah.
go to school. You're a woman of color, you gotta go to school. It's important to
Mm-hmm.
have those acronyms after your name. It's important to be respected and not looked at just because of the color of your skin or who you are. It's important to go to school. And it's important to be knowledgeable, like to be able to have a sound conversation, a conversation without yelling, screaming, and, an actual educated conversation. And how do you do that? By learning, by going to school, by reading, by respecting others' opinions and
Mm-hmm.
respectfully saying yours and speaking up.
From my own experience, it was easier for me to transition into the work environment because I had gone to school. I went to, as you say, school is important for an immigrant that comes here. So for me, it was straight college, going to college, learning, being in touch with those different culture, understanding what the American culture is all about, and interacting with different students. And all those interactions helped me kind of build my own strength. And even in the work environment, it wasn't as if I was going in it at it blind, but I still had a few problem, as you talked about, the fear of speaking up, right? Because in a lot of the countries outside of the US, when you're a child, in your culture, when you're a child, you don't talk to your parents a certain way. You don't
Mhm.
respond to adult a certain way, right? All those things that have been ingrained in me ever since I was a kid, I had to learn to not completely let it go, but how to adjust them to this current situation. I don't know if that was your experience as well.
Yes, it was. Absolutely, I can relate. Yes.
All right. Okay. So for next question, how can individuals or immigrant leverage the barrier strategies such as the one that we talked about, the assimilation, integration, separation, marginalization, to find balance and fulfillment at work?
I think it's important to not hide who you are.
Mhm.
If you are from a different culture, embrace it. Embrace it. Talk about it. Educate folks as you know, a lot of folks can speak out of term,
Mhm.
say things that are very insensitive, and
Mhm.
not, you know, being careful about who's around you and who maybe get offended, but educating folks respectfully, um, and integrating your culture, and not worry. If you want to bring food from your culture, bring food from your culture. If you
Mhm.
you know want to wear certain clothes from your culture, do it. Don't hide who you are. Speak in your language. Don't worry about who's around you.
Mhm.
I think it's that very important, even at work, to help your boss understand that there are certain religious requirements and that you may have to take this out, do something or take the day off because of a
Mhm.
religious requirement or a medical issue because of religion or culture. And it's okay to speak up and say these things.
Mm. Okay.
And
So
I think mental health also, not, I'm sorry to cut you
no,
off.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think mental health comes to play when you hide who you are and you're not, you know, yes, you're coming to this country, America or whatever
Mhm.
country. It's important for you to kind of understand the culture and maybe even celebrate Thanksgiving and, enjoy Thanksgiving, even embrace it. But it's also important to celebrate El Dia de los Muertos and go to the grave site and, whatever you do during El Dia de los Muertos and celebrate also your country's independence and however you celebrate. It's important.
I wanted to piggyback on, something that you said and ask you, how does cultural identity impact job satisfaction and resilience?
I think it's very important to know who you are
Hmm.
and help whoever is coming in front of you, especially in this place, and I'm sorry, in this field of social work or mental health. Again, I think resilience is making sure that you can work through your own trauma before you can help others, you
Mm,
know, and understand that if you see something that is not right, you help them to speak up or you say something or you advocate for them. I
mm,
do that all the time. I speak up against attorneys or for them, for their attorneys. Even though I don't know law 1,000%, I didn't take the bar exam, but if there's something that's wrong, I will help them talk to them. And I think that helping them build that resilience, that advocacy piece, and don't be afraid just because they're attorneys to speak up. And it helps also with job satisfaction. Remember, I told you because this job can sometimes make you question whether you're in the right
yeah,
field.
yeah, yeah.
Doing little steps like that, helping a
Mm,
client advocate, or even like hearing a thank you, right? After you
mhm,
did something small, like it's like, really, you're thanking me for that? But you don't know the little things could impact them. And or something that you said, the resilience that you have built,
mhm.
and you can say something that have experienced based on the resilience. Talk to them about it, and
Okay,
it can change their whole lives, their whole mentality, and help
okay, okay. So, from that, what practical steps can immigrant workers take to deal with stress and prevent burnout in their personal lives?
It's so hard. Um, remember you were just mentioning that a lot of the times they're working so hard because they're
Mhm,
saving money, not only they're helping families here, but also back home.
mhm,
It's so hard because when you come here, you're working these jobs and they pay so little, so little. A lot of the time,
mm,
the table, and you have to pay for rent. You have to pay for a car. You take rides because you don't have a license, means to get a license,
mhm,
because of your immigration status. And so there's just so much responsibilities for folks that it's hard for them to seek. It's easy for me to say, "Oh, go to the gym." Oh, it's easy for me to say, "Take some time for yourself." But I know that a lot of the folks that I work with, any little day off that they have, they pick up shifts. I'm like, "When do you have
mm,
time for yourself?" Right?
mm,
But in a perfect world, if they were making big bucks, if they were if they had time, I definitely would say, "Hey, take care of yourself. Go to the gym. Make some time to call your family back home. Say hello. Steps. Don't send so much money back home. Why don't you take some of that money and take yourself out to eat or go out tonight? Do something good for you. Massage, anything. Um, do something good for you. It's easier said than done. But when you actually speak to folks that are in that situation, it's no, 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 I have a bill to pay. I have the
mm,
coyote that I still owe. If I don't pay the
mhm.
coyote, they're gonna come for my family.
They do go after your family?
Yes, they do.
Oh.
A lot of the times, most of, my clients that come to this country are here,
Mhm.
2 or 3 years, they're still paying off the coyotes. And if they don't, the families are back home, so they're affected if you don't pay them. So,
Wow,
they're working day and night to pay off the coyote.
wow. And how long does can that last?
They give them a time.
Mm,
Sometimes they give them, like, 2 to 3 years,
mhm,
sometimes. Sometimes they give you, like, a year within the time that you get here. We know where you work, we know where your family lives back home,
mhm.
we know everything about you, and we can make things happen.
Wow. Okay. Oh, wow. Looks like we've covered a lot of ground today. We went from cultural theory to practical strategies. And I just wanted to go over a few of the things that I jot down that came to me. Okay. When we started, you talk about the fear, right? And then you don't give your own father's example about his own experience, the trauma that he went through, and even yourself when you came here, losing your status and the fear that you had to live with, and the fact that you still processing this hard or difficult situation to this point. And we talked about Berry's acculturation theory and all the different theory like integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization. And you also talked about the different barriers like distrust, fear, judgment, confidentiality, which you said was a pretty big one, especially in those populations, right?
Yes.
And we also talked about the biases, especially for the professionals looking at the immigrant population from a different perspective because they don't have any insurance, they don't have any kind of some sort of support. A lot of people don't want to work with them. And you say that you do a lot of pro bono work for
Yes.
this population. And even from the professional perspective, you talked about lack of trust, lack of awareness, the unwillingness to also look at that population from a different perspective, which makes the job a little bit difficult, to be quite honest. And you also might mention different training that other people can take, the volunteering. And you for volunteering, you mentioned a house. I don't know what you said, Sojourner's house or what was it?
Sojourner House.
Sojourner House.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a agency in Providence, that
Okay.
helps folks that are homeless,
All right.
or have dealt with domestic violence, and they even have some shelters as well for single moms or single
Mm-hmm. All right.
and do emergency housing.
Emergency housing.
Yes.
Okay. Good. And you also mentioned how you train your own staff, right? Have them sitting in your mental health evaluation so that they have an idea
Yep.
of what you do or what this work entails. And that's kind of like your work, your way of mentoring the people that come after you,
Well, yeah, and
right?
giving back because, it's important for other clinicians to do this job when I'm
Mm,
no longer doing it.
yeah. All right. And we mentioned some self care, mindfulness, supervision, going away from your office, exercising, even though you said adamantly that you do not like it. One of the thing that I think it's pretty big as well is do not bring your work at home.
No.
All right. So at least for that, and I think for a lot of people, it's very challenging, right? Because as you say, your mind still works. You get at home and everything you do is put in review everything that happened. And when you put yourself in that kind of situation, it brings a lot of doubts.
Yes.
So learning how to disconnect from that and then being present. That's why you mentioned mindfulness. Mindfulness, being present with the people that are at home and people present, being present in a moment instead of having your mind going to different places. And we also looked at the child immigrant being in the work environment, the corporate environment, and the different things that they have to do to find fulfillment and adapt to the new life basically or to this new culture depending on what strategy or berry strategy they use. All right, so I think those are the things that are I got from our conversation. I don't know if you want to add anything
No, you covered it all.
more. Okay. All right, so I think for me the most of the question that I wanted to ask you, I've done it. I wanted to say thank you for your time and all the insight that you gave us. But before I let you go, I have two things that I want to do. One question. I have one question for you. Imagine that you're at the end of your life, right? You have all your families around you, your husband, kids, grandkids, I'll say nephew, everybody that you think that are important to you are around you at that time. You have 1 minute to summarize your life into one lesson and to give it to them. And you know that that lesson that helped you change your life can help them change their life as well for the better. What would that life lesson be?
Life lesson is always do right by others.
Hmm.
Do everything you can to help others without expecting anything in return.
Mm,
Always be good, always be kind, don't lie, be honest, and help folks that are less, have less than you.
okay. For the people that come after you, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone that gave back
Hmm.
and that helped a lot of folks with their immigration process, and I really hope that my work is impactful and that
Mhm.
judges are really reading what I'm writing in the evals and what these folks have been through, and knowing that this isn't about money, it's about truly helping to not only educate, but to change perception of the immigration process and, why folks are coming from their
Mhm.
countries here, for a better life.
Nice. Nice. So tell people where they can find you.
Oh, definitely, reach out to me on my IG, Rosalino Counseling Services, LLC, or Rosalino Counseling Services, LLC.com. You guys can call me at 401-808-6013.
Okay. So those are the only place that they can reach you at.
Yeah, for now,
Okay.
through
For
my
now.
website and through my handle,
All right.
or they can call me.
All right. Okay. So the last question that I have is more for the people listening, right?
Yeah.
So I always like to finish everything, or even when I do my posts online, I always like to finish with a question so that they can reflect on whatever I've talked about. So for this episode, it's all about immigration. So what I wanted to ask them is, how can you use today's insight to create a more inclusive and mindful place or space for your own life or your workplace? And I want you to really think about it. Okay. Again, Suelem, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you said. And I guess I'll talk to you a little later, okay?
Bye, stars.
Bye.
Bye. See you later.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. I really want to know though, what did you learn? What stuck with you? I love hearing from all of you, whether you're a current listener, a past client, or someone just finding the show. And while you're at it, do me a favor. If you're listening from your favorite podcast app, hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and throw in a 5-star rating. It really helps us grow and reach more people like yourself. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment below. Your support goes a long way. When you leave a review, you're helping us spread this message and change the world one person at a time. It makes a huge difference. So thank you so much for being here, for your support, and for helping us rise together. Until next time, my friends, keep rising and thriving.